Hey guys, welcome back to another impressions video, this time around for Ori and the Blind Forest for the Xbox One, also available on the PC. And yeah, this is a long overdue impressions video because I've been slacking a little bit in terms of making videos as of late. I beat this game maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, so I do have a couple of videos that I need to record to keep the content on the channel going, but been a little bit lazy, but here we are nevertheless to review this fantastic game that, again, it's available on the Xbox One and on PC. And Ori and the Blind Forest, which, by the way, this is my first ever Xbox One impressions video, so that's another, I guess, milestone in the channel. I've already beaten Killer Instinct for the Xbox One, the story mode with a couple of different characters, so this is not the very first Xbox One game that I beat, but the second one rather. But anyways, going back to Ori and the Blind Forest, I'm really glad I was able to, number one, be patient. Because this game was originally released, I believe, in 2015, early 2015, and it came with as a digital-only game. But it wasn't until maybe a year later where Microsoft announced a definitive edition was coming. In fact, the definitive edition first came out digital only as well. So it took a couple of months again for them to finally confirm a physical retail version of the game, which is this one right here. And it's really cool because it comes with a soundtrack CD on the inside of the case here. So it's a very fantastic price here. For 20 bucks you get a fantastic game plus a soundtrack CD. So I thought it was worth waiting. Sometimes companies end up releasing games like this, so I'm really glad Microsoft decided to put out a retail physical version of the game. I think for 20 bucks is so worth it for a fantastic game plus a soundtrack CD, which has also a fantastic score. But going back to the game, as far as the story, Ori and the Blind Forest basically has a very simple story, but at the same time very emotional. Basically, the two main, I would say, events in the game happen. The first one happens very early into the game. I'm not going to spoil what happens there. It's up to you guys. Most of you have probably already played the game anyways. But something happens, something major happens early in the game, and then I thought the ending was also very interesting and very emotional. So, but as far as the story itself, it's simple, which I think it's a positive of the game. It unravels throughout the normal course of the game. There are some things here and there that you find out story-wise, but the story fully develops at the very end of the game, and it's a very simple story for the most part. You are playing as Ori, which is a forest, I guess, guardian that is trying to reestablish order within the forest. The forest is being attacked by this dark forces controlled by this particular enemy. So the forest is falling in darkness basically, and it's up to you to restore things to normal, things to light, I guess. And it kind of reminds me of Okami for the PS2 and the Wii, in which when you beat a certain area in the game, that area becomes clean and light, and a lot of light comes in. And Ori and the Blind Forest is the same. You visit all these very interesting dark areas and within the forest, and they're all consumed by darkness and decay. And then once you beat the that particular area and you get this particular amulet or stone that you need in order to progress the game, then everything becomes beautiful. Flowers, the water gets clean, the air, everything, the vegetation grows beautifully and stuff like that. So there's that small reward that I felt while I was playing Okami. That was one of my favorite things, to just restore the pretty environments within the game, and that reminded me in Ori and the Blind Forest. Now, visually speaking, this game is fantastic. It's one of the best looking games out there. The animations, they look very fluent. They almost look like hand-drawn, and it almost looks like one of those early or 90s Disney films. The animations are very smooth, very detailed, and very colorful, and hand-drawn like. to the point that it almost feels like you're playing some type of Disney or animated movie, which is fantastic. And the use of colors, the use of the general art direction in this game is just simply fantastic. And I'm a huge fan of how this game looks. And it goes to show that, you know, now we have the PS4, we have the Xbox One, the Scorpio is about to come out next year, the new PS4K or whatever. It shows that, you know, consoles don't necessarily have to push technology too far. You know, you don't need necessarily 3D graphics with impressive lighting and you know, all these techniques and advancements that the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One can provide. This is a 2D game that is just beautiful to look at, and I think that's something worth mentioning here. So the visuals are fantastic. Now, as far as the gameplay, that's another part where the game shines. This is a Metroidvania type of game in which you start obviously somewhat, or pretty weak actually. You don't know any moves, but as you progress through the game, you learn, you know, your typical, your basic types of moves. You know, your double jumps, your gliding abilities. You can upgrade your attack power, or the types of attacks that you can do. You can charge your attack, or you can just do your simple, you know, shooting the fireballs attack in the game. Later on, you find ways to redirect projectiles into enemies and things like that. So there's a certain number of abilities that you unlock throughout the game that will at the same time allow you to gain access to new areas that you either have to progress to, you know, to finish the story, or areas that you have to backtrack in order to collect more energy orbs or more health, I guess health orbs to increase your health and things like that. So there's always that option of going back and collecting things with the new abilities that you gather, which is what, you know, basically defines a Metroidvania game. That exploration element, that backtracking once you unlock new abilities. So everything is done in a very, very concise way, because the map in this game, it's big, but it's not exaggerated. It's not very exaggerated big. I thought the size of the map and all the areas are interconnected very, very well. In a way, it reminded me of Dark Souls or the Souls games in a way, because some of these shortcuts are pretty clever. You know, you sometimes you get to a point where, oh, I see where if I open this door, I'm gonna end up being in this area that I already visited. So I thought that the level design is pretty clever and pretty fair. The way the map is set up, I thought it was pretty good. As far as the gameplay, attacking the combat, you have Ori, which he has a companion. Almost think of The Legend of Zelda. You know how Link has Navi, the fairy, following you around. You have a companion in this game as well that can help you and shoot fireballs and things like that. And like I mentioned before, you can upgrade that ability to inflict more damage to the enemies, or you can have abilities that charge those attacks. And I thought the combat was pretty fun. One thing that makes the combat a little bit challenging are the enemies themselves. Some of them have erratic patterns, like, you know, when they attack, they jump towards you in different types of patterns that, you know, there's nothing very predictable when it comes to the enemies, which is good because it ups the challenge of the game. And speaking of challenge, this game is challenging by itself without even the enemies, because the platforming in this game is brilliant, but at the same time very, very challenging. And as other YouTubers before me that already reviewed this game, Alex Returned to Mother Base and Leo the Funny Nerd, they're right in the sense that they were mentioning how the environment itself is basically the boss battles in this game. The environments are full of like spikes and different types of obstacles that make the platforming very, very challenging and just infuriating at points. Another thing that really there's a risk-reward factor in the sense that the way you save in this game, you have to have a certain amount of energy orbs, and when you have those energy orbs, you can actually create a save portal at any place in the map, really. But you have to be careful not to use all of your energy orbs, because you can also use those to open doors and things like that. So you have to be smart on where to save, and sometimes you get greedy. You say, I think I can make this section, and once I'm done with this section, I'm gonna save after that, but you end up dying. So you have to repeat a fair amount of you know, time that you already spent getting to that point. So there's a risk-reward factor in the save method, which I was a little bit scared, and I guess when I heard that this game has that unique save feature, I was a little bit skeptical about it. But as I played the game, I warmed up to that new idea of saving anywhere, but at the same time you have to be careful when to use those orbs, energy orbs, and sometimes you don't have any energy orbs, so you have to find ways of getting some in order to save the game. But it's an interesting mechanic that definitely ups the challenge of the game. But definitely where this game shines is the platforming. As I mentioned, it's very clever. There are parts where you have to solve puzzles using the environment, using your different attacks, and this game will put you to the test in the different areas that the game has. And the more abilities you unlock, the more complex the platforming becomes, because the game certainly makes use of every single ability that you use towards the end, as far as the platforming and progressing through the next areas and stages. So I thought that was a very fun element, and guys, I love platformers, and I don't mind a good challenge every now and then. So even though it was infuriating at points where you just want to throw the controller out the window, it felt very rewarding once you finish those areas. And I don't know, there's a high sense of reward for beating these or getting through these different areas in the game. As far as the length of the game, I want to say, I know the save file tells you exactly how long it took you, but I want to say it took me between 10 to 12 hours. I was trying to be as thorough as possible, backtracking to areas to get certain orbs or abilities. And I did stumble upon one of the new areas that was added in the definitive edition, which is pretty cool because it has some kind of backstory element that adds to the story of the game itself. So I kind of stumbled by accident in that new area, and then I ended up researching a little bit, and it turns out it's one of the new areas in the game. So I thought that was pretty cool that I ended up doing that. So that added a little bit of more time. So I want to say it took me around 12 hours to finish this game, but I think if you rush through the game, from end to finish without worrying too much about collectibles and things like that, you can beat this game in around 8 hours, which I think it's a nice length. But on average, I would think it will take you between 10 to 15 hours to if you explore the environment, which is highly encouraged, because the more you explore, the more unlockables you can get, and the more abilities you can upgrade. Which there are some light RPG elements in this game. There are upgrade skill trees that you can improve your attack, you can improve your defenses, you can have abilities that allow you to attract whatever items the enemies drop when they die, almost like a magnet ability. You can have skills that show you where certain things are on the map and things like that. So also, you have to be careful and plan ahead on what abilities you're going to need the most, and give priority to those. Eventually, if you get every single collectible in the game, obviously you're gonna get all the energy, unlock the skills trees. And I did a pretty good job. In all three branches, I made it almost to the end.
So I did unlock a fair amount of extra abilities and perks that were pretty useful in this game. And as I mentioned, the soundtrack which comes included in this game is fantastic. The title screen has a very beautiful title theme that it's just very fun to listen to every time you put the game, you play the game, and you get to that title screen. It's a very, very nice theme. Very you can feel sadness in the theme, included in it. But overall, I'm in some kind of Metroidvania kick as of late. I beat Guacamelee, and now I'm playing, or I beat Ori in the Blind Forest, and I just started playing Song of the Deep, which is another Metroidvania type of game for the PS4. When I did a stream for that game where you have to use that little submarine to traverse, and I'm enjoying these modern games, and there are some modern mechanics that I really appreciate. For example, There are certain platforming sections in this game where if you die, similarly to Guacamelee, for example, where if you die, you start right away. The game puts you before that certain platforming part. So you don't have to backtrack a whole lot. It's a new mechanic that a lot of people may say, oh, you know, it reduces the challenge or whatever, but to me it's welcome with open arms. And not only newer Metroidvania games are implementing that, but also newer platforming games like the Rayman Origins and Rayman Legends, where if you died in one section, you just start basically right there. And I appreciate that a lot. And in fact, I've read that the developers of this game, which is Moon Studio, I believe, they were heavily influenced by the Rayman games, which I can definitely see how. There's a lot of dynamic platforming in this game. There's a lot of almost rhythmic platforming elements in certain sections of the game. So I thought that was very interesting. And of course, I love the Rayman games. So you know, +1 in that regard to Moon Studios. And I'm really happy I gave this game a chance. If you guys have an Xbox One, this is a no-brainer. It's $20. Even if you guys don't have an Xbox One, I'm sure you have a PC that can probably run this game. So make sure you give it a try. And this is a beautiful physical retail version of the game. $20. You can't go wrong. It comes with a soundtrack CD with the game itself. And like I said, this game can get anywhere from between 10 to 15 hours of pure enjoyment and just a visual effects that are very, very pleasing to the eye, the animations and everything. So Ori and the Blind Forest, one of the best games that I played so far this year. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you all later.